Well, welcome to all of you for another evening of Food Literacy for All. I'd like to welcome those of you who are here in the auditorium and also welcome those of you who are listening to us by live stream. Thank you all for being here. Just a couple of announcements before I introduce tonight's speaker. Just want to remind all of you and thank our supporters. A number of organizations both within the university and outside the university and the broader community are supporting this course and the opportunity for us to hear from all these wonderful people who are coming to it. And then also just to remind everybody that tonight this is one of our live stream sessions. And we have 4 of these over the semester, and we're very pleased to be live streaming this evening's event. So it's my great pleasure and our honor to be hosting Winona LaDuke this evening. Winona is an environmentalist, a writer, an activist, and a champion of the perspectives and insights and rights of First Nations people. She is director of the organization Honor the Earth, an advocacy organization for Native environmental concerns including climate change, renewable energy, pipelines, and sustainable food systems, among others. She has lived and worked at the Anishinaabe White Earth Reservation in Minnesota since 1982 after receiving a BA in economics from Harvard. She later earned a master's degree in community economic development from Antioch University. In 1989, Winona founded the White Earth Land Recovery Project with the goal of purchasing reservation land that had been sold to non-natives and to create businesses that support natives. These include reforestation, cultivation of wild rice, and other foods that are part of the indigenous heritage of this region. In 1996 and 2000, Winona was selected as the vice presidential candidate of the Green Party, along with presidential candidate Ralph Nader. She has written several acclaimed books, including Last Standing Woman, All Our Relations, Native Struggles for Land and Life, Recovering the Sacred, The Power of Naming and Claiming, The Militarization of Indian Country, and a new book that she will tell us about this evening. She's received many honors and awards, including honorary degrees and being inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. So please join me in welcoming Winona LaDuke this evening.
Hi. Hi. Thank you for that very gracious introduction. Ani nindo I maganaduk. Nigagwe getamagas, Vini sequoia to go, Mokwando dam, Galbabani cog, Econigring, Junjaba. Okay, so I get to be your teacher first. And apparently, do you guys have like these little blue clicker things? Some of you? I've never heard of this. Oh, yours aren't blue, because yours are the teachers. So I'm going to ask you like 4 questions to see how long my lecture has to be, okay? Wait, now how do I get that off? I don't know how to do that. Does somebody know how to do this? And so you can kind of work among yourselves and try to answer these. And is this your first question? Think hard. Scratching your heads out there. Come on. She's going, I don't know. You're supposed to come up with A, B, C, D, like one of them. That's all I'm asking you, right? We'll see. I'm super interested in what y'all know. Y'all college students, right? See how your education is. Huh? What? Oh, do I say the answer now?
Or you can ask.
Has anybody got an answer, or are you too shy? Come on. This is horrible. More than 500 federally recognized tribes. Right? No. No. Over 500 federally recognized tribes. Over 500. And I say that because if you have an American education, you usually don't know that. So there are a lot of Native people, 4% of the United States, and I'm Anishinaabe, and I'm from the White Earth Reservation, which is in northwestern Minnesota, kind of between like Bemidji and Fargo. Does that mean anything to y'all? I'm one of 7 reservations in Minnesota, and we're all Anishinaabe in the north part, and the southern part is all Dakotas. There's 11 reservations in the state of Minnesota, and Anishinaabe people are in the northern part of 5 American states and the southern part of 4 Canadian provinces. We're the second largest Native community in North America. There's about 250,000, 300,000 of us and counting. I don't know, when I go home there'll be more. My house has a lot in it. Okay, then I push this thing. Okay, what's the answer? Enbridge. Wait, did y'all do your answers so that I had that? Yeah, how'd we do? Pretty good, huh? No, not very good. You guys, this is like not good. Okay, you guys, I have to give you the very long lecture. Okay. Okay, now I go for the next one, right? Historic. Okay, you guys voting? Is something to show up there? This is pretty entertaining, actually. Yeah, pretty good. 8,000. But, you know, most of you guys got the idea that there's a lot, right? That's good. That's a really good start. Okay, I think that was all, but there might be one more question. Is there one more question? Oh, this is in miles, not feet. Oh, it's not bad. Answer is B. But that wasn't counting that Fiji water. You know what I'm talking about? Yes. Not gonna be like 8,000 miles on that stuff, huh? All right. So is that good? Okay. That was my first. I never did that before. That's pretty interesting. Okay. So this is where I live. Gawawi-Gamug. I live on the Round Lake. On Round Lake in the middle of the White Earth Reservation. It's actually in the southeast corner. Just want to show you. That's our bilingual road sign, our sign by our lake. And I, live in a pretty good situation. Just say I live in a log home with a bunch of my grandkids and kids, and then a bunch of water protectors, actually. Got a bunch of people that have come in over the past year since Standing Rock have been staying with me. So that's where I live. This month in our language is called Nemei-Benegeesis, which means a sucker moon. Sucker is a kind of fish. I assume you all know that, aside from some people or whatever. That's a sucker moon. The moon that follows this is called Onaa-Benegeesis, or the maple. That's not the maple. It's the hard-crusted snow moon. Is what follows that. And that's like when it freezes and thaws and freezes again, right? Yeah. Also known as the moon you don't want to do face plant in the snow. Iskigami-Zigigeesis, that's around April. Might be a little earlier here. That's our maple syruping moon. When's your maple syruping start here? April or? But now it's coming end of February, really, because of climate change, right? Is that y'all too? Yeah, but we have a good, we're a similar ecosystem, so that's why then we have a moon known as Wabagonageesis, which is a flower moon. O'Day-Menegeesis, the strawberry moon. That's around September. That's around June. I don't know if I'm saying September. July is Mean-Geesis. That's a blueberry moon. Then we have a moon that's known as Menominee-Geesis. That's a wild rice-making moon. That's around in August. Watibaga-Geesis, when the leaves change color. That's around September. Then the moon that follows that is Banakwe-Geesis, when the leaves fall, around October. November is Gashkadno-Geesis, that's known as the freezing over moon. Then Manitou-Geesis, that's the little spirit moon, and Gigi-Manitou-Geesis, that's the great spirit moon. Those are some of our moons in our language. I thought you might like to hear Anishinaabe-Moan, that's the language from this territory. But did you also notice that none of those moons is named after a Roman emperor? You all got that, right? So I just want to say it is possible to have an entire worldview that has nothing to do with empire. You'll be okay. Just let it go. It's really not that helpful at this point in our existence. All right, so this is some art from our territory. This guy has passed away. His name is Roy Thomas. And this is Anishinaabe art. How many of you have seen this kind of art before? So it has some characteristics that are quite different than Western art forms. And I want to say, as you gathered from my introduction, that I was an undergraduate at Harvard University. And if you wanted to study the art from Europe, you went to the Fine Arts Department or the Fogg Museum. But if you wanted to study native art, you went to anthropology. And so what I want to suggest to you is that that's an evaluation of knowledge. That's a valuation of culture. And at this point, I think that that is not particularly helpful to not value cultures that are outside of European cultures or American cultures, and that it is possible that the solution to the problems that we now face is not found in the paradigm which created them. And that's, we got to be brave and courageous and think about that. Inside this art, you see it's called X-ray vision. It looks inside these beings, and then a lot of times there's spirit lines that connect these beings, because we have this teaching of Indinaway Muganatuk that we are all related. But this art itself, this piece is called We're All in the Same Canoe, which pretty much is, I think, where we're all at right now. So I say that because in our teachings as Anishinaabe people, they refer to this as the time of the seventh fire. And in this time, it said that we as Anishinaabe people, we were told by our prophets a really long time ago. Our prophets told us that a lot of things would happen to us, but they said in the time of the seventh fire, the Anishinaabe people would be faced with a choice between two paths, two mikana, two different roads. And they said one road or one path would be well-worn, but it would be scorched. And the other path, they said, would not be well-worn in it, and it would be green. And it would be our choice upon which path to embark. So I tell you that because that's what they say about us as Anishinaabe people, but I'm pretty sure that's where we're all at. We've got a choice about which way to go, in this country here, and I want to talk about what we're going to do and where we're going to go. Now, this is some art that came out of Standing Rock, our battle at Standing Rock. This is one of my board members, Kim Smith, and me in our pretty black dresses. But this is this man is Sitting Bull. And what I want to talk about is what I refer to as the Sitting Bull plan. And that's a lot of where I think our thinking needs to go. Because Sitting Bull is a great political leader of the Oglala Lakotas and the Hunkpapa Lakotas. Sitting Bull said something a long time ago, which I think has a lot of value today. He said, let us put our minds together to see what kind of future we can make for our children. Let us put our minds together. Because I think about that and the challenges that we face collectively as societies and as communities. The question of what it's going to be like 50 years from now here. Oma'a King, or 50 years from now anywhere in your community. What's it going to be like? Who's in charge of that? Where's your water coming from? Where's your food coming from? What are you going to be thinking? How are we going to be treating each other? Will we be conscious? Those are really questions that we got to work on, the answers to. And if you think that the answers are going to be handed to you by someone else, you're going to be pretty disappointed with what they offer you. If you think the answers are going to come from, some Washington, D.C., you might not like it. So a lot of this talk tonight is about, our community and how we decide what way we want to go. And so I want to talk about the Sitting Bull plan, and I'm going to start by talking about making America great again, okay? So this is my idea of when America was great, that there was 8,000 varieties of corn. That's when America was great, tremendous agrobiodiversity. And the corn that was created in the Western Hemisphere, corn doesn't exist in nature. It's called teosinte in nature. And it doesn't even look like corn, but it had to be bred carefully, in northern Mexico for generations to create all those varieties. And I think about that a lot because who did a lot of that? Of course, that was Indigenous people because we were the ones doing it. But also a lot of that was the work of women. A lot of people don't give women credit for work, but the fact is that the best seed selectors, the best people at that are women, because not only do we do a lot of the farming, but we also cook things and we prepare them. And I'm a farmer. I'm going to talk some about that, during this today. But, I had a couple squash get together and it wasn't good this year. So I'm not saving those seeds, right? Sometimes those squash get into other squash's business, right? So what I'm saying is it's like some of my squash is good keeper, right? And I want that. If I'm going to keep it over the winter time, right? Or something like that, and it's got to taste good. So that's what I'm saying is that we didn't get any credit, and those 8,000 varieties weren't created by white guys in white suits from Monsanto and Syngenta. And a lot of the answers to the questions that we face today, the fact is that 70% of the world's food is not grown by Kraft, Syngenta, or Monsanto. It is grown by farmers in villages and communities, subsistence farmers, indigenous people, and peasant farmers. That's who grows most of the world's food. The $13 trillion food industry, $13 trillion food industry is not that industry. that is brought to you by Monsanto and Syngenta, but they do not produce the majority of the world's food. So my idea is tremendous agrobiodiversity, and my idea is tremendous biodiversity. Buffalo, single largest migratory herd in the world. That's when America was great. 50 million buffalo, that's when America was great. When there was billions of passenger pigeons which darkened the skies, and you could walk across the backs of salmon in these lakes and rivers, and you could drink the water in Michigan. When you could drink the water from rivers and streams in Michigan, that's when it was great. And this is where we got to, right? Battle between worldviews, you know? There's a battle between worldviews. So let me talk a little bit about our territory and the story from my community. This is our Monoman, our sacred wild rice. Ladies, there's a bunch of seats up here, and gentlemen, if you like, there's some seats up in the front. Don't feel shy. It's all good. Stand in the back as you like, but okay, so, you know, this is our Monoman, our wild rice. And as Anishinaabe people, we began on the eastern seaboard. And we are related to the Penobscots and the Abenakis and the Wampanoags, the people who are the people that are known as the people of Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard. Those are our relatives. And we started there. We were instructed by our spiritual leaders that we were to move. And so we were instructed to move. We began a migration which lasted a number of years. And in that migration, we followed a shell which appeared in the sky. And at the end of that migration, we are told to find the place where the food grows upon the water. And where the food grows upon the water, that is wild rice. That is Monoman, our most sacred food. And so our people moved from the eastern seaboards to this place, and this is the only place in the world that wild rice grows. This is the mother lode of wild rice, is in particularly in our territory. And this is some art. One of our great artists, his name is Rabbit Strickland. And this is Nana Boujou and Nokomis out in wild rice. And for those of you who do not know, which may be a lot of you judging by the answer to the first question, the wild rice, it grows on lakes and rivers. We do not plant it, the Creator plants it. And all we have to do is take care of the rice, take care of the rivers, put our tobacco out. We go out with, in the fall, in that month, you know, during the wild rice making moon, we go out with our canoes and our sticks. She's got those sticks in the front. You put your tobacco out and the person in the front knocks the rice into the canoe. And the person in the back paddles or poles. And sometimes in our territory also someone might pole from the front. But we bring that rice in and parch it, dry it, parch it, and dance on it. This is rice. This is what it looks like. This is called Big Rice Lake. This is on my reservation. This is Don Goodwin and me last year. That's a lot of acreage of wild rice. It looks just like a field, huh? You know, we have huge lakes full of wild rice in my territory. Our people fought for that, and that feeds not only our bellies, but feeds our spirits, you know. And so Don and I have been amongst a lot of people that, you know, these guys here, these are the Thompsons. And this is what ricing looks like, you know, in our territory. They're on Big Rice Lake. So this is my story. I'm working on food security. I'm hanging out, minding my own business, being a farmer on my reservation, and all of a sudden the Enbridge Corporation announces these pipeline proposals. Now we are the people that are up pipe from y'all, right? Because those pipes come from Minnesota. And so what we have is this history of this tar sands pipelines. This is called the Enbridge Main Line. And we have 6 pipelines that are along that northern route. They were put in the 60s, and they were put in before the Clean Water Act, and the Clean Air Act, or any environmental regulation. And they were put across those 2 reservations, Fond du Lac and Leech Lake. They also clipped part of Red Lake, which they didn't really know that they clipped it. When they went across. And there was a lot of duress in those tribes and a lot of, you know, just passing on, it's just a pipeline, whatever. And so they got 6 lines in. That's the main line of Enbridge, right? And those lines are all pretty dang old. I mean, they're as old as me. You know, I'm 58 years old and I'm a little bit better shape than most of those lines. You know, they are disintegrating. It's particularly this one is called Line 3, and that's what feeds into Line 5. That's what fed the Kalamazoo. That's what also feeds into the Straits of Mackinac. These lines, because they go across Wisconsin. So what happened is that one day I see this announcement in the paper that they are going to put a new fracked oil pipeline from the Bakken oil fields. You see that there sign there, the Bakken oil fields, fracked, called the Sandpiper. It's called the Sandpiper. And they want to put it across. They want to bust a new corridor through the south, and that corridor goes right through the headwaters of the Mississippi. That's that That's why that is there. And then it goes through the best wild rice territory in Minnesota. And you know, we already had 6 lines. And we said, you know, we aren't going to do that. You aren't going to get another line. And so our people began a battle, and this battle began in 2013. I spent 5 years fighting Enbridge. And I gave them 5 years of my life, and we ain't done yet. But they want to put that line in. It's called the Sandpiper. Fracked oil pipeline with 640,000 barrels a day to cut across our best territory. And so we went out and I said, well, I got to get going on this. So I went out and started informing my people about it. And then I spent a lot of time informing non-Indian people about it. Because in northern Minnesota, there's a lot of lakeshore owners. You know, there's 10,000 lakes, and a lot of people on those lakes love their water more than, I'm betting love their water more than they love the oil from Canada or the oil from North Dakota. And so we went out, got a lot of people thinking about it. And my theory was if we could get the Norwegians mad, we'd be good, you know? There's a lot of Lutherans and Norwegians and, you know, Scandinavian people in the North Country. And I was like, get them mad. They're very persistent, you know? So we built a multiracial alliance between the Ojibwe people and the non-Indian landowners in the North Country and a lot of people, you know, from the South who might have had lake homes. And we mounted this resistance. And there's a movie on this. I'm going to our opening tomorrow night called First Daughter and the Black Snake, which is a movie about the battle against the Sandpiper. But we prayed, you know, I dreamed we should ride our horses against the current of the oil. And I have 11 horses, but I was like, didn't really have quite the plan. And then my kid said, you don't even have a horse trailer, Mom. And I was like, oh, I'll get a horse trailer. I went on Craigslist and found a horse trailer. And then they said, well, you don't have a truck. I said, I'll get one of those too. So, you know, basically, we prayed and we rode our horses on the proposed pipeline corridor because I dreamed we were supposed to ride our horses against the proposed route, you know, against the current of the oil that they were proposing. And so we rode and we had a lot of ceremonies, and a group called Friends of the Headwaters filed a lawsuit. And in that lawsuit, you know, we built a lot of citizen opposition to it, but that lawsuit required a full environmental impact statement on that proposed pipeline. And when that was court ordered to the state of Minnesota. The state of Minnesota appealed it to the Minnesota Supreme Court, and the Minnesota Supreme Court ordered the state of Minnesota to complete what's known as an EIS on that proposed pipeline route. And on August 2nd of 2016, after a 3-year battle on that pipeline, and 1 day after our 4th horse ride, because we had ridden 4 times on that route, 1 day after our 4th horse ride, the Enbridge Corporation announced the cancellation of that pipeline. And that was in 2016. And this is just so you know where you are, right? I'm saying that this is the Enbridge main line, and it is heading to you, right? And so my story is really your story. And what we did is we stopped 640,000 barrels a day from coming your way. That's what we did. And now, but what happened is that about a day after they announced the cancellation of the Sandpiper, the Enbridge Corporation purchased 38% of what is the Dakota Access Pipeline, which is the pipeline that they want to go across Standing Rock. And so we followed them out there. And I just seen this one lady here. She was at Standing Rock. How many of you were at Standing Rock? Raise your hands. Thank you. And the rest of you, we got a lot of support. So I want to thank people for supporting us. Thank you for supporting us out there. And, you know, this is what it looked like at Standing Rock. This is, you know, there's a backstory to this, like how North Dakota became known as the Deep North, you know, which is what we refer to North Dakota as. But this is, you know, what it is like being a water protector. This is what it's like on September 4th when you're a water protector, when they put the dogs on you with the security forces, right? This is to protect a pipeline company. And, you know, this is this question that I believe is a real question in this country of civil society. The rights of corporations versus the rights of individuals. This is what it looks like when you're facing their equipment. So I just want to point this out to you as the piece on the right that is tan is called an MRAP. I had to ask someone in the military what that piece was. I said, what the heck is that? Mine-resistant armored personnel carrier. Mine-resistant armored personnel carrier. And just to be clear, you know, so that thing drives through buildings. That's what that thing does, right? And that, it says on the side, you can't see it in this picture, but it says Stutsman County on it. And Stutsman County has maybe 5,000 people in the whole county. There is really no reason to have an MRAP in Stutsman County. But what happened is that until the Obama administration stopped it, the military has been surplusing excess military equipment to civilian police forces. And then they are deploying them in cases like this. This piece here on the right, on the left is called an LRAD, long-range acoustic device intended to blow out your eardrums, right? And so to me, that Trump reestablished the practice of surplusing military equipment to civilian police forces. But to me, this is a Selma moment in our movement. This is this moment where exactly how much are they going to do to you? And how much are they going to shoot you for a pipeline? And a lot of our people, we had 840 people were arrested, and a lot of people were in fact injured at Standing Rock. Injured at Standing Rock when they pulled out the full military on us. This is the bridge on November 23rd. This is the incident that Sophia Walensky lost most of her arm in. And this is our camp. You were here then. Isn't that a nice picture? Are you looking for your tent?
Yeah, I can see my yurt.
Yeah, her yurt. I might even remember you and you.
Craigslist.
Huh? Bought off of Craigslist? Nice yurt. So this is, I want to get, if you were not there, you might have seen some of these pictures, but part of my point in this is that it's not the easiest thing to feed and coordinate thousands of people in the middle of winter in North Dakota, right? Y'all get that? Most of you probably wouldn't even want to have a party of more than 20, right? I'm saying? Try having a party of 4,000. Without running water or electricity, right? I give our people a lot of credit, and all of you who supported us a lot of credit. There's a lot of hard work, for that. And that was a beautiful, beautiful camp, and I was really proud of creating civil society, in there. I was not there all the time, but I was there quite a bit, and my family was there, and I was in Red Warrior Camp, and my horses were there almost all of the time. And then this is when we left. This is a guy named OShea. He's a Dene brother. And I like to show this picture because, in the end, when Trump approved that pipeline, they also ordered in the eviction of everybody. And they bulldozed a lot of things. They bulldozed, 10,000 pounds of dry goods that could have been distributed to people to eat, right? They bulldozed solar panels. We got out everything we could, but they bulldozed it. And this is OShea and those guys burning stuff before the military took it, basically. So I just want to say, this is what my life looks like. This is what civil society looks like to the west of us. And this is the battle that we are facing, because while we defeated them in North Dakota, Enbridge came back with the third pipeline, which is called Line 3. 940,000 barrels a day, proposed to go in exactly the same route that we defeated them in 2 years ago. And so that is the battle that I'm engaged in now, and that's a 940,000 barrel per day tar sands pipeline. We are in a very, very tough regulatory process, and the battle in Minnesota is quite a bit different than the battle in North Dakota. First, we won the last round, right? Second, Minnesota is not North Dakota. We don't have any oil. We got 10,000 lakes and 6 pipelines, and we already don't like the pipelines. Minnesota also sets a really interesting precedent for all of you, because if Enbridge can start abandoning pipelines, which is what they want to do, they want to abandon their old line and get a new route. I raised a lot of kids, and that's not how it works. You don't get to leave your old mess and make a new one, right? Huge, huge precedent. Huge precedent. Bitter battle. And just what I want to say is, if you missed your chance to get arrested at Standing Rock, you could come see us this summer in Minnesota if they issue that permit. Okay? Camping's going to be great, I guarantee it. Contact us at Honor the Earth or at stopline3.org. So I'm telling you this story because I cannot talk about my food without talking about the issues that my food faces. I live in this place where you can still drink the water from a lake, right? You can still drink water from the lake in Minnesota, right? I got a spring right by my house. And all of that, and my house and my community eats a lot of our food. And it's the only thing that we know. It's the only thing we know. We don't, town is a 4-letter word, and I don't even want to go there, right? I'd rather just eat at home, and we got everything we need. And so this moment in time is really that prophecy moment for us as Anishinaabe people. And what I want to say is a little bit of a background about how this happened. And this you all are facing in Michigan. Average fracking well only lasts for 5 years. See that? Because it's the bottom of the barrel. It's extreme extraction. You've run out of conventional oil, and so everything else is down. You got to bust up the bedrock of Mother Earth. So you got to keep production up there. You got to keep fracking, busting it up and opening new wells. But the point of this chart here is pretty simple. Is that we don't call it the Dakota Access Pipeline. We refer to it as the Dakota Excess Pipeline. And we do that for the simple reason that North Dakota may have the Bakken oil fields in it, but anyone who's been watching it out there knows it's not in the best shape. And so 2 years ago, they had 900,000 barrels of oil coming out of the Bakken. And Lynn Helms, the Minister of Mines, predicted that by 2017, there'd be 900,000 barrels of oil coming out of the Bakken. He had no jump in projections. So why they need a 560,000 barrel a day pipeline? You understand what I'm saying? Like, that's what spite and greed looks like. You know, they had no need for that pipeline. They just want to make sure that they got that, you know, and got that over us. And you know, this is the nature of where we're at. But I want to contextualize it because this is North Dakota. This is an Indian people who took out this ad. This is, you know, non-Indian people who are concerned about sex trafficking in the Bakken. And so at some point, I'm trying to look at this whole issue of the intersection between food systems and fossil fuels. And what I'm saying is that we created a system that's pretty much slathered with fossil fuels from the farm to the table, right? And in that whole process, and our whole where we're at in North America, we spend a lot of time saying, well, we need the oil. And the question I got is, what's the price? You know, and I have to be honest, I feel like kind of like you know, it's like, you know, it's like, how much are you going to justify that oil? How much are you going to justify that oil for? This is what it used to look like out there before the Bakken. This is, see, if you look over here in this, I don't know how to use that fancy thing here. This is the fancy pointer thing. Oh yeah, look at that, fancy pointer thing. Okay, see that there? That's the Missouri River Basin. And the Missouri River, and those are Mandan earth lodges up along the top there, and this is a Mandan woman. And these are the varieties. Oscar Will collected these varieties and, in Bismarck, North Dakota, but he collected Mandan varieties. And so the fact is that the upper Missouri River Basin is kind of like the Fertile Crescent of North America. It's the center of agrobiodiversity of northern corn varieties. So many varieties were grown there, and that really, you know, it's the same thing. You get that fertile river bottom, right? You know, and that's where everybody grew that. All those people grew all that cool stuff. And these seed varieties are now owned by Syngenta. They are passed through a series of these companies, and they're now owned by Syngenta. But this is what happens when you lose your food security. This is buffalo skulls. You know, buffalo skulls, this wasn't about, this is about killing Indians, and this is also about destroying our food stock, right? This is what loss of food security, this is what it looks like in North America. Buffalo skulls, and then this is what it looks like. This is the dam project, and this is the tribal chairman of that tribe, the Mandan people. And they're signing a dam project, which is where they dam the Missouri rivers. It's called the Pick-Sloan Diversion Project. And so they flooded out all those bottomlands where those people grew that food and put those people in a situation where they had neither buffalo nor agriculture. And they moved them to the toplands. And a place like Standing Rock, the Standing Rock Reservation lost 75% of their animals, you know, of their wildlife, and 95% of their trees with the Pick-Sloan Diversion Project. This is what colonialism looks like, when they take not only your land, but then they come and flood it. And so this is, you know, this is the backdrop to what was happening at Standing Rock. This is the systems that have supported that. The movement from traditionally, you know, from traditional agriculture to small farming agriculture, you know, horse-drawn equipment to extractive agriculture. The pictures that you have today are like largely Northern Plains pictures. And the transference of these seed varieties that are, you know, viewed as sacred foods by Indigenous people to become property. You can't even hardly see that chart, but basically, y'all get Monsanto, Syngenta, ownership of seeds. The vast majority of the seeds that are, consumed in the broader industry are owned by those corporations. And then this is also North Dakota. So just as a little bit of a, picture, how many of you heard of the dairy termination program? Any of you? I feel like not a single person in this room has heard of the dairy termination program. That was like so interesting. Sometimes I feel like right, so in the 1980s, the federal government decided to move dairy to California. And so they set up this program called the Dairy Termination Program. And I lived on a farm at the time, and they sent all those dairy cows to slaughter. That's what they did in the 1980s. And so they changed, if you look at Wisconsin, Minnesota, if you drive through our territory, Michigan, you guys still have a much more integrated farming community that exists. But in North Dakota and in northern Minnesota, a lot of those farms, they lost all their animals, and so there's empty barns, is what you see. And so in North Dakota, it became so many farms were in foreclosure, and so many of those farms were closed down, and the age of the average farmer in North Dakota was about 60, and their children moved out. Like, North Dakota kept losing people. These demographers called the Poppers, Frank and Deborah Popper from Rutgers University, went out to North Dakota and they studied it, and they said there's like 1 person per square mile out here, right? They said it returned to, quote, frontier status. That's what they actually termed a lot of North Dakota. It is so depopulated because people moved to warm places like California, right? Their kids graduated from school in these small towns and left the farm, and they didn't come back. And so then what you have is a bunch of aging farmers in North Dakota who have lost their ability to continue farming in any tangible way because of whether it is debt, right? Predatory industries, GMOs, right? Y'all follow me how this happens? And then you have about this, so that was in the 80s, and by the end of the 90s and early 2000, the Poppers, what their proposal was, is they came out there in the 80s and they said, you should just do this thing. You should just like pull up your fences and return this whole thing to Buffalo. That's what they said. I thought that was so interesting. They said you should just return this whole territory to Buffalo. They called it the Buffalo Commons. They said in the same area of the northern plains where there's today 28 million cattle, there used to be 50 million buffalo. And those buffalo did not require a fossil fuel industry to support them. They didn't need feedlots. They didn't need grain. They didn't need hay that was put from someplace else because they lived on 250 species of grass, of the tremendous biodiversity of the plains. And so the Poppers basically said, y'all should pull your fences. Y'all should just return to Buffalo, right? They said that in the 80s. And they were like run out of North Dakota like they were like heretics, right? They were like, people from Rutgers University from the East, people from the East coming to North Dakota telling them what to do, right? And then about 20 years later, in 2000, I went to hear the Poppers speak in North Dakota. And they were invited back by the North Dakota Farm Bureau Association, who said, maybe they're right. Maybe we should do that. And so there was this moment in time where North Dakota could have done the right thing. And that is the same time, essentially, that the Bakken oil fields reopened. And so they came in and they the oil industry kind of preyed on those farmers. You understand what I'm saying? I'm describing the scenario of how you become the deep north. How you become the deep north. You get more and more fearful. You have a lot of hatred towards Indian people, which exists in North Dakota. Our arrest rates, our incarceration rates, everything, super high. And then the Nazis move in. There's a film called Welcome to Leith. I don't know if any of you heard about it, but it's this film about the Nazi movement in North Dakota. And because these towns were depopulating, like the Nazis came in and like bought towns. Crazy, huh? But this is one of my favorite pictures. I looked it up on the internet after I heard about this. I know these women. This is Phyllis Young. They were all at Standing Rock. Madonna Thunderhawk, Mabel Ann Chasing Hawk, and I forget the sister's name, but they captured the Nazi flag of Leith, North Dakota, and then they burned it. So this is a little bit about how that all happened out there. You all get this backstory picture, right? So we call it the Deep North, and we still got, you know, a lot of work out to do there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this intersection between fossil fuels and food. I'm an economist by training. I guess you kind of got that from my intro. I'm a rural development economist, and I'm really interested in, hey, what's our plan, right? I'd like to have a plan. You know, I feel like this is where I am. You know, this was in 2000. We're a little further along, and basically in my life, I've consumed half the world's known oil. I had a really good time. Y'all were with me, most of you, right? We're hanging out, you know. We were like, you know, I used to go to drive-in movies. I don't know, y'all didn't get those, but that was before the internet and such, you know. But we like, you know, go to drive-in movies, and we drive around in our cars, right? And I'd fly around. I flew here. You know, I said, you know, had a great time, and I try to get all that food from really far away, get my flowers occasionally from Colombia, right? Y'all know what I'm saying, right? Like, we've just been busy consuming. I had to break it to my kids before they could drive that I consumed half the world's fossil fuels, and they're like, damn, Mom. So, well, I didn't do it myself, but, you know. But my point is that this is what we're doing. You know, not only are we consuming them, but we got to this place where we have this huge transfer of wealth to oil companies, right? And I think that that's like a little bit of a problem. And so my analysis on this is like, I don't know if any of you have addicts in your family. You know, I have some addicts. I've had addicts in my family. And I don't know if you like, addicts are kind of a drag. Did you ever notice that, you know? Like, I just feel like, I mean, I have one addiction, that's coffee. Like, I'm really good on that one. I'm sticking to it. But, you know, if people have like a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction, they like do crazy stuff to get their fix, right? And do you ever notice it's like always your fault? You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, I didn't do that. They made me do that. I mean, there's like all kinds of rationalizations for their behavior, right? All kinds of rationalizations for their behavior, but it's really all about getting their fix. You know, and they'll do a lot of crazy stuff. They'll steal, they'll lie. You know, sometimes they'll fight you, and sometimes they'll kill you. You know, I mean, there's some rough stuff that happens, and I feel like that's kind of what our situation is here. I feel like I live in a world where we are so addicted to fossil fuels that we do crazy stuff for them. You know, we do crazy extreme stuff like bust up the bedrock of Mother Earth, you know, put down 602 chemicals and pretend like that's going to work out for us. Or, you know, maybe we do crazy stuff like drill 20,000 feet under the ocean until you end up with something like the Deepwater Horizon, right? Pretending like that's going to work, or the tar sands, you know, or blow off the top of 500 mountains in Appalachia for some coal. Right? You know, that's like crazy stuff. And then you let some, you know, then you got what's going on with, you know, not only just in Washington now, but I feel like, you know, how are you going to do if you let a bunch of, you know, I feel like not only are we collectively as a society kind of like a big junkie, but it's like you're letting your dealers write your public policy, right? And I always think that dealers don't write good public policy, right? That's kind of my scenario. You know, my feeling right now is like, I want a graceful transition out of this, right? I don't want to like crash every ecosystem. I don't want to invade any more countries. You know, I don't want to like destroy more aquifers. I want a cool way out. You know, and I got some plans for that, but that's, you know, this is the questions of where are we, where we're going. So this is what combusting to oblivion looks like. This is a Navajo generating station at, you know, on the Navajo reservation. And I know you guys are smart, so, you know, you haven't been watching too much Fox News, so you know this is what's going on with the temperature, right? And you know that this is going on with the ice, right? Y'all know this stuff, right? Because you guys are, you know, university and you know these things. This is what's going on with your CO2. It's going into your ocean, you know, because that's what most of the planet is water. And so it turns out that you put the CO2 in the ocean and it does what? It acidifies it, right? So this is what climate change looks like in an Alaska Native village. You know, this is in the United States. And I believe this last year we spent more on climate change related disasters than any previous year in history, right? And this is the Fort McMurray fire in the tar sands a couple of years ago, right? I mean, it could be California. And this is what happens to your ocean. This is your ocean on acid. So I don't have to write you a long memo on what that means for food security, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about their thinking and our thinking. So I feel like that on one level, if you think that these guys are so smart, they act like they're so smart, and a lot of people feel like you cannot stop these corporations. Well, if they're so smart, how'd that happen? This is what this is chart, just to point out, in 2011, $80.4 billion in net income is what the big three US oil companies had, right? Y'all see that chart, right? And down here, 2016, $3.7 billion in net income. That's what they had. Now, Exxon itself, the largest, had $40.1 billion in net income in 2011, 40.1, and went down to about 2.8 billion in net income. Now, people feel like these companies are really, that they are infallible. But my point of this is that if you were the CEO of Exxon and you had a company that had 40.1 billion in net income in 2016, in 2011, and in 2016 you had 2.8 billion in net income in Exxon, you think you'd still have your job? No, you wouldn't have your job because you would be Rex Tillerson, the former CEO of Exxon, who was appointed by the smartest guy in the world, Donald Trump, to be your Secretary of State, right? But my point in this is that they ain't so damn smart. Like that's not so smart, and I don't really understand what this was, but this was like yesterday, right? Y'all saw that yesterday, right? And I think there was some tweeting about it, right? I think that Trump was tweeting, "It's all good" in the hood. So I was like, that don't look so good, buddy. That don't look good. All right. So I'm gonna quit on that stuff, and this is my sister. Now we're gonna go into the solutions, as you've gathered, but I always like to point out my sister here. Her name is Lorna Haynes, and so my feeling is that I go to a lot of these meetings with oil companies, and I say, if you would not like to speak with me, you may speak with my sister. And she's 6'2". She's kind of like, I refer to her as the Genghis Khan of the Ojibwe women. Can y'all see that there? And this is us riding our horses with the Cowboys and Indian Alliance, these guys that defeated the Keystone Pipeline, the last round, right? And we were in Washington, D.C., and she's next to that guy. He looks really cool in his really cool outfit, but she looks way more badass. So this is she's a little bit of my community and who I work for, but this is what a sustainable economy looks like. This is my tribe and our wild rice on Big Rice Lake. This picture was taken last year. And that's the rice coming off the lake in our canoes. And then we bring it in and we let it dry and we parch it over a fire for about 2.5 hours. And then we take it out and then we let it cool off. And then we, I don't know how this moves on its own. I'm gonna go back here one. I don't know if I can do that. Yeah, there you go. And then we run it through this. You can dance on it. If you got a few pounds or 100 pounds, but if you got 10,000 pounds, you might want to run it through this piece of equipment known as a thrasher. Sounds really rough, but that's what you do. And you take the hulls off, and then you winnow it with like a new Scotch and Ogden, which is a basket, or you use a fanning mill. And then that's how you get wild rice. And, so this is my community, and we've harvested that same lake for 10,000 years. I feel like that's what a sustainable economy looks like, right? Like if you can go back to the same place, for thousands of years, you must be doing something right, right? So you can see that's the lake they wanted to run the pipeline over, so you can see why that's not gonna happen. Because those guys, like, I'm the girl who talks on this, but you don't want to, when they show up, you're in trouble. And this is just a really cute picture of a buffalo. Here's your question. The average distance from farm to table is 1,400 miles. Now the point of this is that you saw the charts on the price of oil, right? And you know, everybody in here knows some basic things, but you know, the fact is that the price of fossil fuels is not likely to go down, you know. And so the more your price increases, the harder it is to get. How's that you know, relate to your price of food, right? It's going to go up. The case for a local food economy is some simple economics. If you don't want to be waiting for your food to come in from California, right? So this is what we do in our community. This is a little bit of it. This is a couple of our corn varieties. When I was an undergraduate, my father came to see me, and he was a man who was not highly educated in the Western way, but he was a very intelligent Ojibwe man, and he came to see me, and he said, Winona, you're a really smart young woman, but I don't want to hear your philosophy if you can't grow corn. And so I became a corn grower. And you know, I learned a lot from my corn varieties. This corn variety is what I grow is on the left, or on your right, and that is called Bear Island Flint corn. And how many of you know what hominy is, or pasoli? Right, that's what we grow. And it turns out, like, so when I first grew it, I thought I kind of failed because it was like about this tall. And I was like, oh, my dad's gonna think I failed. And then I realized it had put on its ears, or a cob. And all you really needed for it to do was to put on a cob. And then as I watched the corn, I've never had a crop failure with that corn. And I've grown it for 20 years. And each year, you know, it's a little different, the circumstances, but it's drought resistant and it's frost resistant. And when the big winds came through, Monsanto's varieties tipped over and mine stood. So I grow corn varieties. I'm mostly interested in agriculture in a time of climate change. I'm interested in what you're going to grow that you're going to be able to eat, how you're going to feed your community as the climate changes, you know, and I really believe you have to return to the agrobiodiversity of indigenous varieties, and I believe that you have to, you know, plant diverse varieties. And these guys have twice the protein and half the calories of market varieties. And when cooked, as they are appropriately cooked with ashes, it bioactivates the B vitamins in it. And so they are very highly nutritious. And so that's what I grow as a Bear Island. And this variety here is called an eagle corn. Is that cool looking or what? That's Pawnee eagle corn. And this variety, you know, I got permission to tell this story, but the Pawnee people, they used to be called the Arikaras. And the Arikaras still live in that Missouri River Valley where I showed you the picture of those houses and that woman, right? That's where they come from. And in their creation story, the Arikara people's creation story, the man descended from heaven in a buffalo robe. And the woman descended from heaven in a corn husk. And I tell you that because corn is more than just food you buy at the store to people who have this creation story that is tied so closely to these sacred foods. And so the Arikaras, you know, lived there in the upper Missouri River, and at a certain point they decided that they would part ways with some of their Arikara people. And some of them moved south, and they called themselves the Pawnee, and they lived in now what is known as present-day Nebraska. And in their territory, they lived there, and their varieties did well. They brought their songs and their ceremonies. And there were settlers that came in. And what was told to me is that they got along quite well with the settlers. You know, that they got along, that the farmers that moved to Nebraska early on were respectful to the Pawnee people, and that they, you know, had worked out a lot of their you know, relations there. But the federal government was not content with that, and the federal government forced them out at gunpoint. 3 separate forced removals to Oklahoma Indian Territory at gunpoint. And in the end of it, you know, those people were in a very hard position, you know, and they grieved. They grieved the loss of their people. They grieved the loss of their land. They grieved the loss of all their, you know, ancestral people. And then they grieved the loss of their varieties, because their corn and their squash and their beans and their potatoes, nothing would grow in Oklahoma. Their varieties would not grow. And so they kept them in their medicine bundles, you know, And I was, able to go see them. And one day, this woman from this museum in Kearney, Nebraska, the museum goes over the freeway. I want to call it the Archway or the Gateway Museum. But her name was Ronnie O'Brien. And she called the Pawnee tribe in Oklahoma and said, I'd like to grow some of your ancestral varieties here in your home territory. And she said, is there someone I could talk to? And so she talked to this woman named Deb Echohawk, who's a Pawnee seed keeper. And Deb talked to her elders. And, they said, I don't know if we can do this because we don't have much left. And then they made a leap of faith and they decided to send some varieties back to their home territory. And the descendants of those farmers and the farmers of Nebraska grew those varieties. And what Deb said to me is that those varieties flourished. They flourished. And what she said is that the seeds remembered the land they came from. I thought that's and so I like to tell that story. And I tell that story for a couple reasons. It is a beautiful story. And that eagle corn, is one of those crops that they are restoring, right? But what I think is so important also is that first, it reminds me of the beauty of humans. I don't know how else to say it, but corn reminds me of that because corn doesn't exist in nature. It exists because of us working with nature to make something so beautiful as that, right? And so corn is a history in itself. The other thing that story reminds me of is it teaches redemption. It teaches redemption. That it is possible one day to do something right, to begin to make amends for a situation that happened. And one day, those Pawnee people were asked to come back to Nebraska and to Kearney, Nebraska, and 8,000 people came out to see them. 150 Pawnee came in on a Greyhound bus. And they had a grand celebration, and they said, and it was called Welcome Home Pawnee Days in Kearney, Nebraska. And in the years that followed, for a few years, our organization, Honor the Earth, sponsored Pawnee youth to go work up there at the museum to grow their varieties, And so I want to say that, corn taught me a lot, but those people and those stories, that is how we are linked. And this is my friend Frank Kutka. And I always like to show his picture because Frank's corn is shorter than mine. Look at that, huh? See that? He's a North Dakota corn grower, and he specializes in traditional varieties in North Dakota. But in North Dakota, it's the same thing. You don't need tall corn. It's just going to get knocked over, right? What you need is short corn and just need to put an ear on, And I don't know how y'all are, but I just spent I was at a farming conference, but I've been looking at my seed catalogs, and it's a pretty exciting time of year if you're a farmer, right? It's I can't stop myself. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about what this means in terms of, our pictures and where we're at. This is my community. We did a study in 2008 to figure out where our food came from. And as I said, a lot of our food we grow locally in my community or we harvest it. Big wild rice harvesters, hunters, and I myself, we have pretty good food security and my extended family is probably pretty good, right? Because we have a pretty significant local harvest. But what we found is that we studied and we found that, people spend money on food and they all shop off reservation. And so of that $8 million, only, $7 million goes and is spent off reservation buying food to import it. And that is for our tribal schools. I can study, my reservation is 837,000 acres. But the point is that I can study a distinctive political, economic, and tribal reservation to do the study. But this study could be done in any rural area. I just did it on my reservation because that's where I work. And so we figure out we spend, $7 billion a year buying food from Sodexo, Food Service of America, Walmart, right? And we spend $1 million buying food on reservation, and the food that's bought on reservation, we're buying it at convenience stores, and most of that's junk food. And you got a third of your people with diabetes, and you wonder how that all happened, right? And so what I'm interested in is the question of long-term food security. And as an economist, this snapshot, we spend about a quarter of our money on food on my reservation, and we spend about a quarter of our money on energy. And that energy is for heating our houses and our electricity, right? And what I realized is that it's all a hemorrhage. It hemorrhages off. And so people can come into my community or other rural communities and say they will bring jobs. But if your economy is structurally so maladjusted that you are hemorrhaging 50% of it off reservation, no job will really help your situation. You'll just bring in more money and it will continue to hemorrhage out. And so the case for local food and energy security is really the case for all of us. You know, how you want to build a multiplier in a stronger local economy. So this is the big picture in terms of energy. You know, it turns out, I don't know how this worked out, but, you know, and this map is just for Western tribes, but it turns out that Indian reservations are the windiest place in the country. I just want to point that out. And if any of you were at Standing Rock, they have class 6 wind, and it was super windy out there, right? And I don't know why we're the windiest place in the country, but we're really windy. And this is, you know, some of the potential for the next economy. This is the work that we're interested in doing. And people say that you can't meet present energy demand with renewable energy. That's what they say. You can't meet present demand. And my point is why would you want to? Because if you look at this chart, between point of origin and point of consumption, this comes from Lawrence Livermore Labs, and there's an updated chart, but it's just even worse. Between point of origin and point of consumption, you waste 57% of your power in this country. So, like, what kind of dumb society is that? You understand what I'm saying? Is why would you want to meet present demand if you waste 57% of your power? What you want to do is get smart, get efficient, get a lot more local. Build a local food system and then not slather fossil fuels on it, right? Build a local energy system and decouple it from the stuff that you know, is our economy. So, this is a little story about my community. I wonder if this slide got out of order here. Could have. I live in this community of Pine Point, which pretty rough. They did a film on it a couple years ago called The Seventh Fire, which was a really poorly named film. I think I call it poverty porn, that film. But it shows, like, we have a meth epidemic in my village. Opioids. Anybody else have one of those? Everybody has that, right? Yeah. So we decided to go in there and start changing it. And I don't know if art changes people, but I was inspired by Balmy Alley in California, and I decided we should start painting our housing project. That's my housing project in my village. And it's our water tower in our village. This is our idea of a local grid. And then about, this is my friend Winona LaDuke up in the tar sands, and for her master's project at the University of Victoria, she's in the middle of the tar sands, her village, Little Buffalo. They had a diesel generator that powered their clinic. They didn't even have energy in their own clinic in the middle of the tar sands. Y'all get that picture, like how crazy that is? So her master's thesis at the University of Victoria was to build 20 kilowatts of solar. I just felt like, you know, some people write about it and some people just put up 20 kilowatts of solar, right? I was like, cool, huh? And so then I got all inspired and I just did the same thing. I don't think I actually put that picture in, but I just put up 20 kilowatts in my own village. And then we decided to do this. So what we're doing in my village is we have the restoration of this local food economy. And you saw some of my seeds, and I'm going to show you some more of them, right? And then we just built this. So I did a Kickstarter this fall. I had no idea how to do a Kickstarter, but I'm trying to build an integrated farm economy in northern Minnesota. And some people, did you guys legalize hemp here? You have no idea? Not. Okay, so I have been growing hemp for 3 years. I have a state permit in the state of Minnesota to grow hemp. I grow industrial hemp. I don't have anything with THC. You could, like, you'd get, you know, have to smoke a whole bale and you wouldn't get high. Anything I'm growing. Nothing I'm growing is going to help you out on that way. But my point is that Minnesota used to have 11 hemp mills in it. And until like the 1920s, the majority of our clothing was actually out of hemp, as was a lot of other stuff. Hemp was outlawed in the marijuana prohibition. But the fact was, is like everything I'm wearing today, pretty much everything you're all wearing today is toxic. Y'all know that, right? Like, I'm wearing stuff made of fossil fuels. It's like, nice, I like that spandex stuff, it's great. It's all fossil fuels, right? And so the question that I have is like, how are you going to decouple your system from fossil fuels? Right? Y'all understand what I'm saying? And then how are you going to rebuild an economy? This is the Sitting Bull plan part that makes sense. You know, so I got super irritated at Donald Trump, who just added a 30% tariff on solar. Remember that? You know, and everybody's like, you know, we're not going to have solar now. I had two responses to that. One is, aside from the usual response to Donald Trump, you know, aside from that is that, well, what if we did it here instead? Right? Like, I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to push us to fossil fuels. But I was like, what if we just rebuilt the local energy economy here? And we built the solar panels in this country instead of in China. Not a bad idea. So the Iron Range in Minnesota has a $5 million facility they're putting up for solar. And I'm like, let's just do it, guys. Why don't you just build it and we'll buy them? And then I said we should do this. So we started this. This is my tribe's hemp crop. And what we are interested in is fabric. And we're interested in rebuilding the milling industry in the Great Lakes region that was flax, and which is what you turn into linen, and hemp. Because even cotton consumes a vast amount of pesticides and a vast amount of water and is imported. And when they did the dairy termination program, they also shipped most of the milling overseas. So you can't even get things milled in this country anymore. It's all milled in Pakistan and China. So my interest is in rebuilding and restoring an integrated economy of which hemp is a part of it in a crop rotation. This is what else I grow, our squash varieties. I grow mostly traditional varieties for my area because I figure everybody can grow all that other cool stuff. I'll just grow my cool stuff. This squash is very high in antioxidants. It is Arikara squash. This is like, you know, Arikara is like the Pawnee people squash. And this squash here has a long story. When the seeds were given to me, I was told that those seeds came from an archaeological dig near Green Bay, Wisconsin, and that the seeds had been in a clay ball in this archaeological dig. And when they shook that ball, they heard something in it, and they cracked it open, and there was these seeds. And they carbon dated the seeds 800 years old. So when I got these seeds, that's how I was told. And then somebody did some other work, and they said, well, actually, it wasn't 800. It wasn't quite the right story, but the seeds were 1,000 years old. It was a 1,000-year-old variety called a Miami squash variety. But being me, you guys hung out with me for a while now. I started growing this thing. I was kind of timid when I started growing it. I started growing it. This is my squash. I grew both these in my garden. And I was like, you know, everybody's like, well, what's that squash called? I was like, oh, I don't know what that squash is called. You know, I was like, you know, and so then I decide, you know, do you ever notice that white guys get to name stuff all the time? You know, like they're busy naming everything all the time, right? You know, so name this, name that, and, you know, name everything, name a lot of things after themselves. I noticed that. So I decided to name that squash. So I call that squash Gete Okosaman, which means pretty much really cool old squash. And then I look at my Baker seed catalog, and there it is. Now, I have no idea what to do about that, but I thought that was hilarious. You see that my name is in that? Can you all see that? I was like, they got the squash. You know, and I'm really like, I could never sell it because it was given to me. Does that make sense to you? Like, I just couldn't. They're like always, and then someone must have given them seeds to them. My partner took this picture. We was just laughing. I was like, wow, we made big times, huh? But that squash is a really good keeper. You know, I ate one that was good till May. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I think of a squash as kind of a perfect carbon-reduced food because it doesn't need to be canned or, you know, you see what I'm saying? If you get the right varieties, they can just like hang out for months, and then you can go get them. So, like, I'm a big fan of squash. I know a lot of you may not be a big fan of squash yet. But, huh?
It could be up to 18 pounds.
Is that what it says in there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. They're big. I mean, mine are like this, you know. It's not like this. I mean, you know, and I'm always, you know, I grow them every year because they're like kind of like my thing in my family, right? They're big. They're really yummy, and they have like a huge number of seeds in them, but I just thought it was super funny when they arrived in the seed catalog with our name on it. I was like, wow. And so this is my idea of a farm-to-school program. So we grow these corn. This is a Dakota white flint corn, and I ran a farm-to-school program for a while in the Pine Point Elementary School. This is me attempting to teach 5th grade boys to braid corn. Not the highest success rate, but they're pretty good. I know all these kids, they're all big, tough kids now, too, And I show them that picture once in a while, like you and your braiding skills, man. But, my idea is like, and it's the same idea that a lot of you have, is like, I grow the cool stuff, but I want my people to eat it, right? And so I provide it for ceremonies, because we have a lot of, like, some of you might be, about our powwows and all, but we have a lot of ceremonies. And so I'm the girl that usually brings the corn and squash varieties, Other people bring their wild rice or their deer meat or their fish, But I'm the one who brings like those things. Because I feel like, what I feel like is that your spirits should have that food. You understand what I'm saying? Like in your ceremonies, you should have that food. And then also, I'm always trying to make sure that that food is available for the people in our community that most need it, right? And then now I started selling this last year, and this year I'm going to be more of a commercial grower in addition to that. But mostly for, I'm not going to be ever a real big grower, but I grow cool beans, cool squash, cool corn varieties, cool potato varieties. That's good. And then this is me in my Vanna White pose. I just laughed because I was like, my cousins didn't want to take it. They're like, no, you take that picture, Winona. But that's us braiding our corn. Looks cool though, huh? Like all our corn varieties. So, this is what a local food system looks like. And basically I'm telling you this story because like we could wait for someone to fix this stuff for us, but it's not gonna happen. So we just decided to start doing it ourselves. And in the meantime, you gotta fight off a lot of different pieces, but you got some choices. Choice between two paths. This is a woman on a horse at Standing Rock, And I feel like there's that path. And I'm hoping I'm not looking at that this summer. But I'm ready. My horses are ready. And, this is a woman leaving Standing Rock. And I just feel like in the privilege of, my life, I've seen a lot of changes and I've seen a lot of courageous people. And I know that, we got a lot going for us. But I feel like we're way cooler than they are. I don't know how else to say it, We have cool squash. You understand what I'm saying? Like Kraft has no cool stuff. We got it, and so a lot of our work is about making sure that we not only preserve that, but it flourishes, because in ensuring that our varieties and our food systems flourish, our people are really strong and really proud. This is something very few people see. I just have to share this with you. I took this picture about 2 weeks ago. This is when they pack up their pipeline and leave. Y'all get that? Very few people get to see a pipeline company leave. That's the sandpiper. As we speak, each day they are taking out all those pipes. I heard they're going to Texas or something, but yeah. I cried when I saw that. But to me, that I can't have that fossil fuels I can't have it in my rice. And it turns out I can't have it in my soil. And it turns out I can't have it in my air. So our farming operations, a lot of them are hand. We got some tractors, but we also got horses. We have horse farming at our scale. Because I'm really interested in the post-petroleum economy, the post-petroleum food economy. And if you if you go organic agriculture, you can sequester about 1/4 of the carbon. And that's what we want to do. Carbon belongs in the soil, not in the air. And the way that happens, the way that change happens, is really through people doing it. The federal government ain't going to solve this one. It's local food, local energy, and changing that economy. This is a water protector picture in downtown Duluth. We painted this mural this summer because I believe that art changes how people view you. And so it's an Indian woman in downtown Duluth on 2nd Street and 2nd Street. And she's like she's about 60 feet tall and 40 feet wide. That's pretty cool, huh? That's our organization, Honor the Earth. Thanks for your time. I'd be happy to answer some questions if you like. My fellow water protector sister here has the retireline5.org information. Can get some from her.
And little talking points in the back.
And some talking points, but yeah, my story is your story. You got that on the pipeline thing? You don't need those pipes on the Straits of Mackinac.
So for those of you who can stay, we're going to ask you to stay about 5 minutes so we can have just a few questions. Before we start the questions, we want to thank Winona again.
Thank you.
And we want to remind you that next week we'll have a similar discussion with Chef Njati Wa Kabui from Kenya, who's going to talk about the impact of colonization on the African food systems.
Yep.
So we have just a few minutes for questions. Do we have the mic circulating? We got one mic here. Any questions? Yes. Wait till the mic gets to you.
Sorry, this isn't about food, but the militarization of the police that you've written about before. Do you think DAPA would have been approached differently if they didn't have all the excess surplus military gear? Would other tactics have been used? Like if you have a hammer, the whole world is a nail, right? So if the police didn't have all that equipment in their back pocket, would it have been the same situation?
You know, I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, so you guys heard some of my story, and it's like it's a lot longer story, but we knew, like, I wasn't watching that pipeline. I was like, I'm taking care of this here. I hope y'all got everything else. You know what I'm saying? Because I was like, I mean, I spent 5 years on this, right? Every regulatory hearing. And so, in the process of that, we were in a different terrain. In North Dakota, the situation was skewed. First of all, you got an oil-producing state and a lot of Indian hating, right? You have this, you had a lot of hate. You call it the Deep North. I mean, it is the Deep North, the stuff that happens in North Dakota still. And then you had, a frustrated oil state because the Bakken is tanking, right? What I'm saying is like the Bakken oil fields are not in robust shape. They had an 87% drop in drilling rigs out there. And so they're trying to blame someone. And they got some idea that if they have a pipeline, everything's gonna be okay, right? And then you had, they didn't do an EIS, and they didn't do anything because they skirted all the federal regulations in the process. They streamlined the process or, fast-tracked the process so they could get through without the regulations. And so, there was a lot of circumstances which created that, but add to that the hate and the militarization. It's brutal. People know it's brutal, but, I have to say is that, I was out there, I did not get shot. What I know is I saw it. I was there, and when they put the dogs on us, when they put the dogs on our people, I called Enbridge, because Enbridge had just purchased that 38% of Dakota Access Pipeline. I called them and I said, Enbridge, because Enbridge has these people. First, they sent out these people. They're called tribal relations specialists, to try to get the tribes to like the pipeline, right? We refer to them as the Indian whisperers, right? And so you guys hung out with me. You know how well the Indian whisperer thing went with me and Lorna. It just didn't work, right? Because there's nobody wanted them. And then if we blew through 2 Indian whisperers, and then they have this person called the Indian listener, right? Who comes in from Calgary, and she's this special person. And I called her, and I texted her, and I wrote her as soon as those dogs came. And I said, you need to demilitarize this, Enbridge. You have an Aboriginal people's policy. You have leverage out here because you just financed an oil pipeline that did not have good financing. You did that, Enbridge, and you need to call for an EIS. You need to call for consultation. You need to, reconsider the whole proposal and put it north of Bismarck, right? I called them and I texted them, they did nothing. And so I hold Enbridge responsible. I hold Enbridge responsible for, a third of the injuries, a third of the bullets, a third of the tanks, a third of the arrests. I hold Enbridge responsible, and I told them that, and when they first came back to Minnesota and announced Line 3, I was at the meeting. And I asked that question. I said, we were all out there. We saw that. What you gonna do here? And they like headed out the back of the room. I mean, it's like, it could have been different, but it was kind of like a perfect storm. I think for all of that, and then with Trump's election, it was a perfect storm. But, Minnesota is not North Dakota. And like I said, in June, we will know if they issue this permit. And the state, in October, the state recommended against issuing the permit already. The state of Minnesota did not recommend issuing that permit. And, but we are amassing, we have camps now. And I'm like, you don't want to issue that permit, Minnesota, because you don't want Standing Rock here. We'll be here. We already live here. So we'll see. But like I said, if camping in Minnesota is very nice. We're going to have some very nice, my yurt is already, my fellow yurt, I have a very nice yurt that was, my yurt is preparing for camping. Be very nice. Anyway, other questions? Yes.
This is related to some of the things you said in your last answer, and I was wondering if you have lessons or suggestions both from DAPL and your fight with Line 3, because we have an Enbridge Pipeline coming down our pipe, both in Ypsi Township and on the west side of Washtenaw County, plus Line 5. And so, yeah, I guess I was wondering if you have, I know that you said DAPL was different, and there's different people and different landscapes, but just things that we can do going forward, because it feels like we're surrounded on all sides in a lot of parts of Michigan.
Yeah, I think we just need to keep pushing on them. They are the largest pipeline company in North America. They may be the largest pipeline company in the world. They are self-financed in some of these pipelines. They are not subject to the same divestment strategy that we have used elsewhere. Although U.S. Bank, they are getting some of their shares dumped. There's their investments dumped by big banks. BNP Paribas, the French bank dumped them. U.S. Bank. There's a lot of push on Enbridge right now on this line, but Enbridge really wants Line 3. One thing y'all need to do is support us in our Line 3 battle, because we're the way it's going to get to you. And if we stop them, it's not getting to you, right? So keep that in mind, and then keep pushing, because I think that the issues of, these are 50-year-old lines under the Straits of Mackinac. Those need to be pulled. We need to stop doing crazy stuff like that. And Michigan has been expressed great concern, and you just need to keep pushing on it. And I feel like, as those pipes left Minnesota, I've been asking for the past year. I was like, I tell Enbridge and I tell the state, I said, look, we don't want those pipes here. You should send them someplace that needs them, like Flint. We're a place with a D in infrastructure. This country has a D in infrastructure, in our energy infrastructure, and as well our sewage and water infrastructure. And we're a first world country with a D in infrastructure. You got gas mains that explode and blow up city blocks, right? So I'm like, put people to work fixing that stuff. Put people to work fixing the infrastructure. You don't need new infrastructure. What you need is the infrastructure you got to work, for people, not for oil companies. So to me, that's a lot of the Minnesota battle, and that's certainly the Michigan battle. You guys have crumbling infrastructure, quite obviously, and people deserve that. So I think, people deserve real infrastructure. So keep pushing.
So we've got time for one last
I'm
question.
so sorry.
And
I
think
blab
you get
on
the
and
last
on.
question.
I just make a comment about the Line 5. There is something that we can do. Line 5 is operated by an easement that either the Attorney General or the Governor can revoke. The Governor's going out, but the Attorney General's running for Governor, so you can do something. Call him weekly and tell him to keep his promise to shut down Line 5, because he can do it now as Attorney General, and he wants the votes. So we have leverage.
Yeah, that's perfect. Just stay on them, You got to stay right on these guys. This is a big problem, and you have a shot at it, And other places have also opposed it. Okay, one more food question. Oh. Okay, yes.
When you cook your corn, you say you're cooking dash.
Yeah. How do I cook my corn? Okay, so I get
Can you repeat the question so everyone can hear
the
it?
question was he asked me how I cook my hominy corn or my Flint corn. It's a Flint variety. So when you look in your seed catalog, look for the Flint varieties, right? And then you take that variety, and then when it's done, you take it and you go like this, and you get it off the cob, right? And so then you have a pot, and so I do a big, I don't know how many quarts, but like this tall, right? Because I don't want to mess around, right? And so then you put it about a third full of corn, and then you take about this much hardwood ashes, and you put them in like, I put it in like a pillowcase, like fabric, and you tie it in there, and then you put that in your pot with the corn, and you fill the pot up, and you cook it for about 5 hours with that in the pot. Right? And you got to keep putting water in it. And that process takes off the outside hulls. And there's a special word that for some reason I can never remember it, but yeah, that one. What is it again? Nixtamalization? Nixtamalization, yeah. It's gonna still in one ear and out the other. I mean, I heard it something, but that's what it is. And that rocks the B vitamins, right? That's the one that it changes it chemically. But you gotta cook it with ashes. You gotta cook it with ashes to do that. And that's super interesting because in the US there's a history where they didn't cook it for ashes, and that's where the pellagra epidemic came from. At the early part of this last century, where they were feeding cornmeal to people in orphanages and in like mental institutions, and they died because they didn't have the vitamins. But if you cook it with ashes, they got all the vitamins, So, like I said, food's medicine, food's magic. Take good care of your cool foods, and you guys can grow everything here. Don't be wimps and buy from California. Grow local.
Give another hand to Winona LaDuke. Thank you.